also, legislating them down to fewer plants. I'm saying let's create another conversation, one that is, palatable to all parties, which would mean if you're going to use the idea of calling it a home occupation, not the caregivers, but let caregivers opt into declaring themselves a home occupation. It doesn't effectuate MMA caregivers that we know, love, and don't want to be affected, but maybe you build into something in MRTMA or some kind of administrative rule or something that allows caregivers to utilize their existing grow and produce into the market, assuming that they can pass testing, which is something they're going to require. And with that, let the cities, regulate them like a home occupation. They're going to try to do it anyways. At least let them get because right now the idea that they're home occupations, caregivers, would still mean they can only sell their 5 patients. Like, they're not encouraging, extending, and if they were to try to do that, they'd be shut down because the one thing, unfortunately, in the recreational law, which I think is, I don't agree with this interpretation, but I think we're going to fight about this in the courts for a long time, is whether or not the remuneration associated with the transfer or delivery, what is the penalty?
Habitual, willful, for commercial purpose.
I know. But the delivery, listen, there are penalties for the possession with intent to deliver.
Yeah.
There are penalties for having too many plants and possessing more than you're allowed to.
Yeah.
There are not penalties for smoking in public, and there are not penalties for delivering to a person with money being exchanged, period. And in no way will you ever catch me ever agreeing with this anywhere.
This is a horrible interpretation.
Intellectual debate here. These areas that we're talking about are the areas that are have seemingly been, call it the failure of our leadership that we elected. It's not being said
It wasn't
clearly.
the intent.
Of course it
certainly wasn't the intent.
The same argument, the same logic could mean that the legalization of marijuana intentionally left people under the age of 21 to be felonized and criminalized and forfeited for.
I don't agree with that
Well,
interpretation.
I'm saying that that's an interpretation that's being taken as well, especially.
I think the law actually says the exact opposite. If you read it,
I'm not
saying you. I'm saying the royal.
Listen, my point is that the caregiver activity that are operating under some self-demanded local home occupation category, if they sell to more than their 5th patient, in the selling to the 6th patient is a delivery with money being exchanged, and would arguably subject a person from being pulled out of MRTMA, an interpretation would suggest, and into the public health code. This
maybe
is absurd.
They get pulled out
discussion.
of the MMA, and then I would probably expect them
they'd be
claim.
pulled out of the MMA, but they'd be protected under state law,
under MRTMA,
except for the. Listen, this is not. You understand this is. I dramatically oppose this, and I could show you the legal reasons why. But the areas that seem to be where the state seems to retain interest in. This is a fair statement. If there's been any raids, okay, and I don't know. Maybe somebody will tell me otherwise, but and I can tell you there's a time when my office got I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 10 calls a week about raids.
Yep.
At houses. Okay. Not anymore.
That's a good thing.
It is a very good thing. I'm saying to you, if there are any calls about those things, it is the places that are retailing, commercial.
Yep.
And they don't have a license.
Yep.
And they're doing it out of a place.
And they shouldn't get fucked with either.
I agree with you 100%, but I'm just identifying this phenomena as the one area that remains.
Yep. But we knew that was going to happen.
All right, you guys jump in. I'm sorry.
It's an extending leg. It's an extending leg. The guys up north that got hit at that grow store, they took the label off the brownie and looked them up on Facebook, which was just a caregiver at home, and ended up raiding her place as well. But again, it's an extending leg of a retail operation.
Well, the place in Genesee County, what's the place called? A couple places that were places that were private clubbing it.
Yeah.
Let's
not name them.
No, we don't have to.
I think a while back there was something called the rec center, but
we don't have to name them. I have a client in the UP who likewise and they kick in the door and they take the money, which is odd because you know what? Current forfeiture law requires a conviction.
Yeah, right.
So how do you start? How do you take the money and all this shit that's
Take the
that's
money and
outside?
run.
Well, and that's what they've always been after. I mean, and I mean, I haven't really chatted too much on tonight, but like some of the things I've been picking up tonight over the course of the conversation is, what are we going to do to solve this? How are we going to protect caregivers? I've heard a lot of talk about, legislators and stuff like that failing us and, not necessarily standing up. And going back kind of to the beginning, even with this boycott, I agree on a lot of things that were said, that the boycott's not really going to affect, because the people that are pushing this around aren't shopping there anyways. But it's still, the way I look at it is all this stuff, though, going back to what we mentioned with the Walsh bills, those were things that were catalyst, essentially, to bring a lot of people together, a lot of people in Lansing. And I think that's what we're seeing here now. For many years, there wasn't the group mentality of getting together and wanting to fight back like we see now again. And the reason I say that is, just today, personally, with what we've been working on our end, I was on the phone today from 10:30 in the morning till noon, got in another conversation at 1:30, was on that one till 5 o'clock. And in one of the conversations today, for instance, I got enlightened to a lot of things. Yesterday there was a work group done with a bunch of people regarding social equity. And within the first 5 minutes of this work group, there was responses from people that were associated to Green Peak and Flourish immediately that didn't even have anything, the questions weren't even anything to do with caregiving. It was to do with social equity. And they spoke up and said, we need to end the caregiving. They said end. They removed. That was their words. Spoken by Flourish and then supported by the guy from Green Peak. So I don't really see it getting a whole lot of traction right away, but not necessarily is the MCMA the only threat that we're going to have, because this is just the first of many, in my opinion. And I think they're kind of small, personally. When you see things like Amazon, for instance, pushing through with this federal stuff, you're going to start seeing bigger players, bigger, I've already seen that there's a federal, United States Cannabis Coalition or something like that holds groups like Kronos, MedMen, Acreage Holdings, Kira Leaf, and a lot of huge players, bigger than a lot of the ones here in Michigan. So this could just be the beginning of a hugely ramped up, geared up war. Considering, again, like Ben was saying earlier, that it's not just these businesses and entities and stuff, but we have the Michigan Municipal Leagues and stuff like that, educating communities how to put these zoning things together. And I think that's one way we got to combat this stuff. There's education. We got to be out there and get the message not just to these local communities, but into Lansing, because that's where all the real, pen meets paper. And unfortunately, the caregivers haven't really got a direct voice right now. I talked to a representative today of somebody that's a multi-state operator that literally started out as a caregiver here in Michigan back in 2008. And they want to support us. They're like they want to lend things like artwork and development of some stickers and things like that they're going to get thrown around to all these different dispensaries that support us, smoke shops that support what we're trying to do, which will then be a small amount of money that'll generate more amount of money, and we can start doing more fundraising. There's a lot of dispensaries reaching out right now that want to, once we're formed, actually donate. Because they started out as caregivers and don't want to see them go away. There's some other.
I'm sorry, but I was going to say it's important that is understood, which is not part of this that article or any of the messaging, which is there are other businesses that recognize that they are not threatened by the minuscule caregiver market, and they shouldn't be, and that they're actually supported. That's a very important point. I didn't want to interrupt you.
There's some that I know that are operating in more than one state that want to see the caregiver product make it to their shelves.
Sure. And let me say this, and this is what I was trying to accomplish before. There is not a clear unification of what the caregivers would want after, if they were to form and get organized and create I don't think that, if you could say you get your fucking magic wand and you get 3 wishes, go ahead for the caregivers. What are they? I don't even think that there's a unification amongst the thinkers on this that there's one particular thing. I think you got a whole variety of ways to go. But I think, with all that being said, part of what I've tried to do tonight, if I didn't make this clear, was to try to just get, because let me say this, I don't think ever anyone's going to agree to okay, just keep caregiving. You know what I mean? Like if we're going to have a discussion, they're still going to try to ban it. And if you're going to not ban it, and I'm not talking about traditional caregiving. You got your 5 patients, your 3 patients. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone that is caregiving and wants to get in, and they elect to get in. And that election process means that by doing so, new rules may apply to them. So where are these rules and how do we do this? That's another story. But if I was to suggest some things that may be palatable to both sides, you can follow me on these first couple steps. It would be obviously to participate in the commercial market and to have a home occupation, so you don't have to get a building, for example, good for caregivers. Got a pole barn, good for caregivers. The city zones you in there as a home occupation, good for caregivers. Like all that shit to get into the industry is now gone. Like the barrier for the 100 plant grow is like very few cities have opted in. And where can you find a 5,000 square foot building, that doesn't cost a fucking shit ton because it's now in a green zone and it costs a lot of money to build out. But if you got your pole barn in your backyard and you're allowed to grow a certain number of plants and you can go at it, you got to pay some money to the city. You're going to be expected to pay some taxes. This conversation becomes, and it may even be regulated locally because they could do that. They may be dropping in like they want to do. They want to do this anyways. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is how they've envisioned this. You want to be a motherfucking business? Go ahead. We'll call you a home occupation. We got to do this, this, and this, but we're going to limit you to do this, limit you to this. But the reality is that it's not really business because they can only sell to 5 people at most. But if they could sell to the entire state, then it might be worth it. And if they choose to do so, you know what I mean? And they can actually compete and they can create a quality brand that somehow gets in there. And I don't know, I think that that's a better conversation to have than eliminating caregivers, because you may get some of these folks to pull out, and then the question becomes, if let's say they came up with something like that, you leave the caregivers alone under the MMA and you create this new caregiver plus, or call it MRTMA, home occupation cultivation license or something like that, right? That sounds like something. A home occupation license. And the city, it's just funny, like the cities would have to opt in. Every one of these cities that's banning caregivers is like already opted in a way. You know what I mean? Like they've already got the language of how to get a home occupation license. So the idea of categorizing at the state level, of creating a new type of license, and if they're going to do it anyways, why not let them go beyond 5? Let them sell to the entire state. Let them compete at the state level, test it and get into the marketplace. Be subject to all the other stuff that they want to, but on a much smaller scale, there'll be some minimal requirements of safety and shit and electrical. But I mean, that's a middle ground. That's a conversation no one's having. They want to push you into the 100 plant grow, but it's not realistic, especially if the cities are controlling and prohibiting entry into the marketplace. Chad, what about? I mean, that was the point I was trying to make. This would have to be done without amending either law, which is impossible, of course. But
right, and that's, I mean, from everybody I'm talking to, and I mean, in the past week, and since I've been on the show last week, I've talked to literally like 50 plus people on this. My phone's been ringing off the hook, or I'm getting messages or something's going on. I've been in conference calls and everything else, and the primary thing that I hear from everybody is they don't want the act opened up. They want the law that we all voted on and passed in 2008, protected 100% on pain. And for the most part, we think a lot of the people that these people are worried about, so to speak, are pretty much in the process of transitioning. There's a lot of people that are caregivers transitioning already into the market. I think if anything, from what I'm getting, and I'm not just speaking for myself, that a lot of the people would like to see if anything change would be, lobbying from done within, to change some things in Lansing and addressing things like the cost and operations and stuff like this of the smaller licenses, make it easier for these people to transition, because if they're that person, they would. And then as far as, just the regular, Joe Schmo caregiver that's pretty much doing everything, for his patient, donating, a bunch of meds for RSO to save a terminally sick cancer patient, for instance, or something like that. But at the same token, they gotta, pay their bills and stuff like that, and have a little, possible way of, making a little bit of money or offering some of their overages that the patient don't need to the market. That's where these lounges and things we could create and more avenues for something like that. But again, through rec, because we can all have 12 plants if we're over 21, bring it in and just do it
Right.
under the rec or something like that, because that's not affecting, the medical act and the laws it stands, and the people that just aren't, these major offenders, that gives them an avenue for just a little bit. And the people that are the major offenders, let's make it a little bit easier for them to transition out.
Listen, we're speaking the same language here of trying to figure something out. What I was trying to say was, first of all, I agree with you. Reminded me of something that was an important lesson I learned legislatively. Like when amendments are introduced. Like I'll give you a specific example. The Walsh bills had. They were really going after the bona fide doctor-patient relationship shit at that time, right? That was one of their big fucking beefs. And they were trying to, one of the bills, and even they were trying to like penalize or create a penalty, so something, either against a doctor or against the patient or something like that. And the answer to that, I actually met with Walsh, I remember. I won't say who was with me at the time because it would be weird. But there was, I said, our argument to him was like, there's already a remedy for whatever issues if the doctor is doing something wrong, the people that give the medical marijuana license also regulate the doctors.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And they're gonna know about it, and you don't need to create some new fucking shit. You know what I mean?
There's a whole process.
In order for them to even begin to penalize them, there's got to, it's gonna come to fruition because of some identifiable evidence that they're doing something below the standard of care. And under no circumstances should this act be a punishment. It should be they're going to get punished through the licensing agency. That's what the act suggests and purports, because it's only a licensed doctor that would be able to participate as a as a DO or MD, as a certified physician. But returning to Chad, I think your point, if everyone's still there, is that we may not need to, and we don't want to open up the act at all. And the real answer is leave the caregivers alone. I agree with that. Let them be. Don't amend shit, okay? Okay, fine. But that's probably not going to happen. Efforts aren't going to stop. Is there going to be a continued ongoing battle over this discussion just because we say leave caregivers alone? Are they going to leave caregivers alone? Probably not. So what would be an alternative discussion? Are we still live? Probably not. I feel like we lost everybody.
No way.
Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, what would be? They're not going to leave them alone. So, and I don't even know that it's whatever we're saying is more just intellectual babble. I mean, because of course we want them to leave it alone. Let the caregivers be. The statistic that Adam pointed out in the article, that there's only 72,000 patients that rely on the 35,000 caregivers or whatever it is really saying, like, what the fuck are you complaining about? Leave these motherfuckers alone. They can't even be identified as a mathematical significance, statistical significance into the market that remains for you, which is literally like, what is that? Is it a third? It's a third of the market, right? 33% probably. Is that right? 72 if there's 200 and 140. If there's 210 patients, right? It's 1/3 of the market. I mean, who cares, right? And you got the full rec market now too. They should be blaming the cities instead, not the people. Anyways, I'm just throwing out there some.
No, it's way more industrial.
You know, there's like, for example, remember, Adam, there was a time when people talked about trying to get, if there was going to be an amendment, getting the caregivers to be able to have 10 patients instead of 5. Like, that would have solved some things, you know what I mean? Maybe. I don't know. Still, you know, or 15, right? That was something. You know, at least it made it a little something, you know. They talked about that, but again, it was always a concern. If you open that up, how are they going to destroy it later? You know what I mean?
Right.
But,
well, I mean, we've had this act for quite a while. I mean, 2008 to 2021 right now. You're talking 13 years.
I mean, listen.
And we've protected it really well. And we've had one of the best, most unique programs in the country.
It really is. And the 72 plants and the, I mean, you know, I mean, it's been, listen, I'm trying to look at it from the, listen, I lived in the, the battlefield with many, many people, saw devastation. I probably have some PTSD myself. This in no way compares to anything that they went through. I can't even imagine, you know, the shit that they see at night when they close their eyes. And inhumane treatment, you know, just like treating people. But with all that being said, look what happened. I mean, I like to say that you know, those that in this community that I call group of friends, even though I don't agree with everything everybody says all the time, but do consider them friends and allies in the war against people and the war against drugs. You know, what happened? Well, number one is medical marijuana as an idea not only caught on, but became the majority, right? Game changer. Majority of no one's against it. You know, you're the evil opposite bad person if you're against medical. Everybody, somebody knows someone that's sick that has heard that they benefited from it some way, and it isn't just some fucking smoke and mirrors. It's a reality. Okay, so the idea that the cannabis community against, I mean, Bill Schuette. You know,
fuck Bill Schuette.
The clearing the smoke on marijuana campaign. If you remember that shit, Ken Stecker showing a picture of his kid in the first slide. This presentation is, you know, dedicated to my son. Like, what does that have to do with what you're about to do right now? But anyways, you know, so that message, it motherfucking won. I mean, you can't, and that is only because of vigilance and advocacy and in some form of unity, you know, in some form of internal or you know, even though at times at each other. So that's number one. Number two, at the end of the day, despite, you know, like, it's funny because the medical was always, it's all bullshit. They're just doing it to be legalization, right? It's just a path. You hear that?
Exactly.
Even today.
It's our foot in the door.
But what did I just say? Medical marijuana is the real fucking deal. There are a lot of people, and because of it, even though it did lead us in the foot in the door and get us to the legalization, unequivocal, right? And but it doesn't. Those two things don't equate.
Well,
I mean,
we told no lies with medical marijuana.
Correct.
And that's the difference between what we do and what we're up against. Is that we tell no lies. We can tell the truth. The truth may make us look bad. It still doesn't harm us.
And think about this. The initiation, obviously, I was talking to someone, you know, the MPP or whatever, but after that, you know, just a fucking, you know, like a fucking amoeba growing into like a fucking, in a forest, trying to like survive, you know, just fucking all kinds of weird environmental challenges, like,
one of those single cell organisms.
Right. The accomplishments to be standing here and saying that, you know, it's been legalized, the messaging, and this is in the hostile land of the police, who are the masters of propaganda and have been, you know, pressing it, and a legislature that was antagonist against it too. So there's a lot to. I say, listen, there's equally as much pain and suffering across the board, but, you know, the pain and suffering for those that suffered from pain, it's nice that their pain and suffering got us somewhere. It wasn't in vain. You know what I mean? And every one of those, like, you know, I mean, it's if you're gonna put a silver lining on it, it's like the you know, the perils of war. You know what I mean? This is did we get anything out of it? Yeah, here we stand with some sense of accomplishment for people that had to go through this. But and as I said, against the police and the legislature, because they did everything they could to fuck it over. They had 20 opportunities to fix things. They didn't do it. And, you know, treated the citizens that were participating it's like shit, thinking that they were going to win in the end, and they lost in the end, right? And, but I'm saying that this whole idea that this new perceived cannabis community is acceptable in identifying them only as the industry is really problematic. And the idea that they're calling the shots on how to go forward from here is it just it brings up all the stupidity, lack of understanding of the way the fucking thing works. I mean, and I'm saying to you, like, so the idea is that they're doing so in a way that it's difficult for the cannabis community to compete with. They are money players. They are paying people to get their ideas in front of legislatures. We could talk all day long and protest, and yes, that's a thing. You know what I mean? That's a thing that works. It can work. It's got to be decisive and you know, organized. And sometimes those events, you know, they're always criticized. Always put a microphone instead of some moron will say something stupid, and that'll fucking blow the whole thing for the media. You know what I mean? There's always something like that happens. But I was going to say the other side of it is that first of all, the boycott got us somewhere, right? They're having a conversation. People are backing off. So Chad, hats off to you and the push for that, because it makes them at least perceive that there's enough from that declaration, that threat, that they need to fucking respond.
Pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You know, and they identified who they are. You know, and the push on this issue makes the industry decide whose side they're on, which is good in a way. You know, but I do have concerns for the influence they have in the framework and space that they're operating in, which is regulating rules, you know, influencing the regulation of rules, lobbying for law changes, and the idea that that sells is that if you tax and regulate it, everyone's happy in the state of Michigan, which is just fucking bullshit. You know what I mean? And I just was throwing out there some other conversations that I thought might be meaningful, other than, you know, ban them. You know, and I think, and listen, it's a good topic to have in the group from show to show, Chad. Like, what, you know, where would the caregivers come to a meeting of the minds on if they had to? You know what I mean? Because you know, they're either going to have to stand and fight, or they have to win a court battle, right? That's the alternative. Because one of these places is going to get shit on. They're going to keep fucking with them until there's a legal decision that stops that, or you're going to have to figure out a way that's going to be palatable. And what would that? I mean, that's a better question. What would that caregiver message be? I mean, I think you have on one end of the spectrum, you know, the 5 patient only limit is who we're going to stand behind, and they only set a 5 patient, and anybody else is giving us a bad name, and they should be called out and fuck them. That's a position. I'm not saying I'm supporting that. Then there's the other side of it, which is no. The only way for me to support my patients and their donations is for me to fucking be able to sell my overages, and I need opportunity for that. There's a huge market and blah, blah, blah. You know, whatever that is. But somewhere in there's got to be a, it doesn't have to be. I mean, you can start with number 1 is, fuck it, leave the caregivers alone. That's our position, and we're going to, you know. But I'm saying if you're going to, I don't know. I mean, I think that, I don't know, Adam.
Like a common goal.
Yeah, like a common goal.
Like a path.
Right, because if you were going to get a chance to talk to a legislature and say, what the fuck do you want? Give me what do you guys want?
Well, I mean, from first and foremost, like I said, is they don't want the act opened up and touched, and they want to be protective. You know, and they want to educate people why, obviously, is one of the things that I'm hearing back, you know, and have the opportunities, whether it be through a lobbyist and getting somebody in there to explain, because there's a lot of places that still have drive. I mean, for miles in Michigan. You know, it's not like there's a plethora of dispensaries in every single community. In those communities, more than anything, is where these caregivers are extremely important. Not everybody can travel. Not everybody can afford it. You know, there's a shit ton of different reasons why these caregivers are needed to be out there literally saving lives. The true caregiver that is, you know, like I said earlier, giving meds away and stuff like this. So with that said, they need to be protected first and foremost, which is the caregiver law. You know, the common things as well when we talk about the bad actor, so to speak, that whether it be a club or delivery or, you know, somebody that's, you know, got, you know, 5 different addresses, you know, or something like this or whatever, you know, there's civil ways of handling that. That's the biggest thing about it, is that people don't want to see incarceration. They don't want to see police raids. They don't want to see doors kicked in. They want to see this handled in a civil manner. And there's plenty of ways to do that. There really is. We've all seen businesses that have got, you know, doors chained, you know, so if they're literally refusing to get a license and take, you know, the avenues of what there is, we've seen them, you know, stop the certificate of occupancy and stuff like that. You know, you're not going to jail. You're not.
Well, I mean, the point is that listen, I could say that that decision may not need to be made like what the resolve is. You know, it's a conversation to be had at another time. It's an interesting discussion if there was one. But I don't think, you know, the idea. I don't think one can get behind the idea that a caregiver can argue that I'm needed because I got to get it to the 6th and 7th and 8th and 10th patient. I think that you're going to, you know, it's not a.
No, I don't think I don't think the caregiver really needs to ask for anything.
Right, they just want to be left alone.
I think the caregivers just would be happy to work with the system they have now.
Right. Leave me alone.
The reality is that the word overages does not exist in the law.
It does not.
So there is no such thing.
Of course.
There is no such thing as overages, and you can sell to your 5 patients.
And that's it.
And that's it.
And it's not a home occupation, and don't come at me. And here's the point. I think so. So the answer is that if then we have got to win a case. Chad, I told you I'm chomping at the bit to, you know, it's going to be a district court fight of an ordinance, an appeal by one of the sides to the circuit court, an appeal by one of the sides to the Court of Appeals, and we'll be talking about DeRuiter and Tierbeck in front of the Supreme Court. So that's the path. You know what I'm saying?
So he's in it to win it.
That's the fight. That's the fight. You know what I mean? Because ideally it's going to be a caregiver that's got 5 sick patients, and we're going to make the case. You know, it's funny. I was talking to a client of mine that's going to be at the Expo in Mount Pleasant this weekend. Okay, am I promoting it?
Yeah,
we're going to be there. We're going to be there. But he's a medical marijuana. Facility license in Mount Pleasant, actually, and we were talking about ways that he can kind of market to this crowd. You know, he's a great situation where he can say, like, hey, if you're a patient, come over here, and you get 20% off, order online and drive over and get it, you know. We were talking about whether you could have a bus. Like, you remember, I was actually, what's the guy's name in Detroit, Adam, that...
I'm French.
Right. I mean, you can actually, like, reproduce that from the casino to the place. They can smoke at the bus. We were just spitting.
No, I know.
We were just spitting ideas out, and I said, who's his target market? Like talking medical marijuana. Like, you may get some people that stumble in from the casinos that are there to gamble. Oh, what's going on here? And but I'm saying the messaging of medical marijuana is always a good message. It's like, the patient stories are remarkable. It still carries a lot of influence, and so the caregivers associated with that in a battle that point to that is the winning combination for this fight. I'm trying to pick and choose our plaintiff or our defendant if it's going to happen. You know what I mean, Chad?
Yeah, I agree. You got to have the right one.
I mean, it shouldn't matter. The law is the law, and the protections exist because it's the MMA, right? I mean, and I'm just saying though that from a PR standpoint, I mean, the dying over the caregiver, the battling on behalf of the caregiver is enhanced with the visual of who these 5 patients are that need, 3 pounds a month of flour to make 3 grams a day, or something like that. You know what I mean? Some kind of. Anyways, we're way past our. People are chomping at the bit here. I think I got an orange thrown at me. There was a siren that went off a little while ago. Everyone listen, I kept promising I was going to stop talking. I don't think I ever did. I'm thirsty. My voice sounds scratchy. I'm going to stop. You guys make your final comments and thoughts while I drink some water and look over here.
I think it's time to go.
Well, Chad, how are we going to find out more information, and what are we going to be looking for in the months and weeks to come, rather?
Well, like I said, I mean, we're going to be filing paperwork within the week. I had to find out some information on which exact, paperwork to file between like 501, C64s, all these, there's different things you can file to figure out which things they were for. And again, I'm kind of a rookie at filing and forming this, and so I had to reach out to some people and get the right answers.
Yeah, you should call me. I wouldn't do that because there's a lot of nuances in that, and there's a lot of it goes into the nature, intention, and purpose of the organization. That's to be clearly set, and you have to be very vigilant about following through with that. Otherwise, if the intended purpose is to provide tax write-offs or exemptions for said donations, you got to make sure it's tight and easy to follow. All right. Just
wouldn't hurt at minimum to get another opinion, but moving forward, you're going to get a Facebook page put up and all that stuff.
Up already. It's the United Cannabis Caregivers Association. There's that. We're gonna be put on. There's another nonprofit that was formed, which I'm hoping to actually come on next week and bring her along as a guest. That's to do with social equity, and they can discuss what they do. But they got a website, and a page that they're going to devote an entire page on their site to us, which will be up within the next week. As well as we're going to, obviously get our own website separate of Facebook and stuff, and the regular social media apps up. But we're just, getting started. But there's a lot of interest. We're going to, like I said, have stickers and stuff like that out there to get a little money generated. We've got people reaching out, like I said, from Lansing, Muskegon, Ann Arbor, Flint, Flushing, Detroit, all the way to the UP, close to the Wisconsin border. So, like I said, I think this catalyst is something that's actually going to bring a lot of people together and actually do a lot of good work going forward. Standing up and giving the caregivers a voice. So,
Awesome.
we are looking for people that can be involved, though. So, if you want to, or anybody here that wants to,
Yeah, I think everybody is interested in signing up and helping in whatever way is needed moving forward.
Chad,
like I said,
I'd hate to have. Yes, consider us, please. If you didn't know, you should.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe Chad, you can hit him up tomorrow, talk offline about it. Send him a message or send Steve a message and go from there. Adam, any final words?
Just that we need to stay on top of this type of thing because, there's a lot more of it coming down the pike, and it's going to come from all different directions, and that's what happens when a new industry forms. And this is just the beginning.
Way to go.
That's what we do.
All right.
We'll keep at it.
Shut it down.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on. And we will talk with you hopefully next week. And until then, be safe and keep up the good fight.
Cool.
Talk to you later.
Turn it down. Thank you, everybody.
Shut it down.
Great
Bye,
talk.
Be well.
Michael.
I
Bye,
look forward to
everyone.
more intellectual discussion in weeks to come.
Absolutely.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
before you plead, call me, Attorney Michael Komorn.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.